Hi, my name is Jack Amendolia, and I work for a firm called Watson and Associates. We were hired to help the board with the school boundary review that they're conducting for all their schools in the city of Oshawa. There are a lot of schools involved and a lot of moving parts, and the school board thought it would be helpful to do some short videos for each school community to explain why the board is doing a citywide boundary review in Oshawa and how it might impact their school communities.
Before we talk about some of the specific data and scenarios that are impacting St. Joseph and its school community, I just want to spend a minute or two talking a little bit about the process and some next steps, and talk a little bit about some of the conditions that might be present and why a school board might be considering a school boundary review.
The material that is being presented is based on options that the Board of Trustees agreed to have staff take to the community for input. These are not the final recommendations, but really are intended to provide potential options for your input and feedback. The committee, made up of various board staff, school principals, and a school council representative from each school, will review the feedback and then prepare final recommendations. Those recommendations will be brought back to all of Oshawa via virtual meeting on May 4th, 2023. So why does a school board do a school boundary review or an attendance area review? Well, there's a variety of reasons why a board might conduct a review. Right now, we're going to explore some of the main ones. One of the primary reasons is enrollment pressures, and that means when the enrollment at a school is significantly over what that school was built for. And a school board looks at boundary reviews or changing those boundaries as a way to try to alleviate that enrollment. Again, assuming there are schools close by or somewhat close by that can take that additional enrollment. The other reason why a board might consider a boundary review is when a new school opens. If that new school requires a new boundary and it impacts some of the existing schools, again, a boundary review may be necessary to determine what that new school's boundary will look like. Another reason is an enrollment imbalance, similar to the first point about enrollment pressures. The school board may have some schools that are significantly over capacity. They may have some schools that are under capacity, and they may need to just try to better balance or equalize enrollment for those various schools. And then the last one is program. So if a board has, for example, a French immersion program, and they are looking to either expand that program or offer it in a different way or change the boundaries of that program, that's another reason why a school board might do a boundary review. In the case of this review, and like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it's a citywide review, fairly complex, a lot of schools involved. And the other thing is that all of these things, all of these reasons about why a school board might do a boundary review are present in some form in the City of Oshawa review.
Now we're going to take a look at the enrollments of the schools in the study area. So what we're looking at in the table in front of you is all the elementary and secondary schools that are involved in the Oshawa boundary review. The other data present on this table is showing you the OTG, which refers to the OTG capacity or on the ground capacity. And what that's talking about is the permanent bricks and mortar capacity that the school was designed for. It also shows all the grades by school, or all the enrollments by school by grade, from JK to grade 8, shows you the total enrollment. And the utilization rate is really a percentage that refers to the total enrollment relative to the capacity of the school. So if you have a school that was built for 300, you have 300 kids in that school, your utilization rate is 100%. And what we noticed too on this slide is that the utilization rates vary. There are some schools that are well over capacity with really high utilization rates, some, at or a little bit over or under, and a couple of schools that do have some surplus space. When we're looking at St. Joseph specifically, the school has an OTG capacity of 395, so that's what it was, the permanent space that was built for. It currently has an enrollment of 538, so over that capacity of that school, and it results in a utilization rate of 136%. The next slide, we look at very similar data. It's October 31st, 2022 enrollment data. The only difference here is the totals are the same, but what we've done is we've just broken out that enrollment by English program and French immersion program. Right now in the city of Oshawa, the board offers French immersion at 3 elementary schools. They're what's referred to as dual track elementary schools because they offer both English and French programming. Right now, those schools are St. Christopher, St. Kateri, and St. Thomas. There's a total of about 537 French immersion students in the city of Oshawa, makes up about 11.5% of the total elementary enrollment in the city. By school, at St. Kateri, about 41% of its enrollment is French immersion, at St. Christopher, about 29%, and at St. Thomas, about 36%. So now we're going to get into looking a little bit spatially and visually at what these boundaries we've been discussing so far actually look like. So this map shows you all the elementary school boundaries, again, in the city of Oshawa, all different color coded to delineate between them. And it starts to give you a sense of how big or small these boundaries are, where they are in the city, how they relate to each other, where the actual school facility is in this boundary. It's denoted by that yellow little yellow building, and it shows you where your boundary is. It's right in the middle of the map. It's inside this red circle here, so you can see where you are in Oshawa, and like I said, how you relate to some of these other schools as well and other school boundaries. And this map very much the same. It's still looking at the schools and school boundaries, but what we've done here is we've just added a heat map to it, and we've just and the heat map relates directly to the utilization of capacity rates I just spoke about. Anywhere you see sort of these orange and red colors, those are high utilization rates, and you can see the legend here at the bottom left. So it means the school is operating well above capacity. Anywhere you see more of these green colors, more sort of at or near capacity, where you see some of these cooler blue colors, which indicates that the school has some surplus space. So St. Joseph, we can see in that orange color, and we had just looked at the utilization rates, according to the legend, somewhere between 126 and 150% utilization.
The scenarios considered for part of this review really fall into a few main categories. The first one is school boundary changes. So we're talking about a traditional school boundary change where we look at moving the line to either make the boundary larger or smaller. The second is grade structure changes. So the new approved Monsignor Paul Dwyer Secondary School has been approved as a grade 7 to 12 school. So as part of this review, the board is interested in hearing from the community about possibly which grade 7 and 8 from which schools should go to the new secondary school. And the third main part of this review had to deal with French immersion programming. As we talked about previously, there's currently 3 dual track French immersion schools. So we looked at a diverse set of options all the way from status quo, leaving it as it is, to 1 single track facility for the whole city, multiple single track facilities, combinations of single track and dual track. So really all options were considered.
So now we're going to get into how some of the scenarios that we've considered and talked about with the public so far specifically impact St. Joseph. So really the main scenario that has an impact on St. Joseph is what we refer to really a few different focus areas. This one would be more under the traditional boundary change. So we've highlighted the fact that it's operating well above capacity, over 500 enrollment compared to 395 OTG for a rate of 136%. So really, again, the impetus behind making any change here was determining whether we can try to alleviate some of those enrollment pressures, reduce some of the enrollment at the school through a boundary change. So under this proposal, what it's saying is that it would send approximately 95 students from this area highlighted in blue that currently reside and attend at St. Joseph, and the proposal would send them south to Sir Albert Love. They're located, most of them, in fairly close proximity to Sir Albert Love. These pink purple lines that you see on the streets are actually what we call a walking web, a walking boundary. So what it's indicating is that most of these streets are within the 1.6 kilometer walking distance to Sir Albert Love, which is hidden just behind this table down here. As a result, to get that done, if we just sent those students to Albert Love, it would then put Albert Love way over capacity. So the other part of this recommendation in the top right here, this area is actually also part of Sir Albert Love's boundary. It's what we refer to as a satellite boundary because it's not completely, aside from this little corner here, attached to the original boundary. So under this proposal, this satellite boundary containing a little over 80 students would actually move south to John the 23rd. So what does that do? Well, utilization rates at St. Joseph would drop from 136% to 112%. St. John, that's below capacity, would increase to about 100% of space. And Sir Albert Love kind of stays a little bit the same. It's slightly over capacity right now, and it would remain slightly over in the short term, dropping back down to about 102 to 107%. The next one that has to deal with St. Joseph is also contingent upon some of the other things or some of the other scenarios that we've considered actually being accepted and approved by the board. Basically, what it's saying is that under another scenario for consideration is the removal of the French immersion program from St. Christopher to reduce enrollment there and disperse that or put that French immersion program somewhere else. If that was to happen, what this scenario is looking at is, and again, it assumes that what happened in scenario one actually gets approved as well. If all those things happen, St. Christopher has a little bit of room to include some additional students, and that's what's being shown here is that the western, extreme western portions of St. Joseph and Sir Albert Love's boundaries would be directed west to St. Christopher, again, just to reduce some of the enrollment pressures or reduce the space a little bit at St. Joseph and Sir Albert Love and try to balance enrollment a little bit better. Also sort of thinking about distance of these students to these three schools, and I think to get a little bit closer under this proposal. So the implication for the St. Joseph community, really the same. I mean, and it's really option one, that's the major one, but really the implications are reducing enrollment at the school and better utilization or lower utilization, less reliance on portables. And the second one, again, really just feeds off the first. The first one is the major component of students. The option two is if that's done and some other things happen, is there any room to further alleviate that enrollment?
To finish off tonight's presentation, I just want to talk a little bit about what we've heard so far from the Oshawa community. So we've had a couple of community level meetings. We've had some committee level meetings. We've had a couple of surveys that have gone out to the public, as well as feedback that can be provided to the board through a general email address. And from that feedback, there's a couple of things that are starting to come from it. One thing that we're starting to hear is that there seems to be a preference for single track French immersion programming. There seems to be a preference for two facilities in the city of Oshawa rather than one. When I want specifically with regard to single track French immersion programming, a lot of the feedback wants to see a reduction in this enrollment pressure that we spoke about. There is a concern or a consideration to try as much as we can to keep communities together. And the public also wants us to consider with regard to any changes that might be made, what transportation implications there are, how long students might be on a bus for. When we look at one question that we were asked or that we asked the community early on in the process, what are some of the initial issues you see with some of the existing conditions at your school? You can see that about 50%, a little bit over 50% of the responses are either enrollment pressures or too many portables. So I think there's a clear understanding in the community that there's schools that are operating above capacity and that something needs to be done to deal with some of that enrollment pressure. And that's why the board is undergoing this boundary review. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video tonight. I hope you found it informative, but if there are any questions, we will continue to reach out to the community. A lot of information can be found on the board's website and a couple of meetings coming up. Thank you.